a great question. I recently found like a lot of sheet of papers in my old piano bench, like that I just like stuffed in there. And I guess they are my earliest compositions. But even the ones that I didn't use Indian notation for, I've just written like letter names. Like I haven't used a staff, I haven't used manuscript paper in these early things until like late high school. I think I was very intimidated by it. I think that this is something that our world could, like our genre could do a little better work with, because I think that there is a gatekeeping element to it. It's not that sight reading actually is that difficult. I recently did a workshop totally for Indian musicians on how they can use only their Indian music knowledge to access. We ended up they were like singing along to Stravinsky's Firebird by the end
Oh,
of this
cool.
1 hour. Like it was very immersive, but it also, I just eliminated certain things that I found like superfluous to their like knowledge for that setting. We just honed in on the most important aspects of treating. We talked about the staff as a graph, basically thinking of it that way, and then everybody was able to follow along. And like it was so exciting to be able to present that to people who were either like me, like trying to find their way through these two genres, or there were older people in the room who are never going to go study Western classical music in their lives, and they're not planning to. They just want to be able to understand it a little bit more when it comes on the radio. So anyway, that experience reminded me of the fact that I often felt like I was sort of drifting at sea without a life vest sometimes with
Yeah.
Western classical music, because there is sort of this attitude, if you don't know, like shame on you.
Right,
And
right.
whether it's this kind of information, or even like, oh, you're not familiar with Tchaikovsky's piano concerto, like what are you doing with your life? Like why even try to enter this field? And like I said, because I was so into music and so curious about music and taught to be curious, that didn't really stop me. But I definitely was, say, embarrassed to tell a teacher, I don't really know what's going on right now. I don't really understand. On the one hand, it made me like work very hard on my own to kind of develop an analysis system that was my own language, like this hybrid way of understanding. Like I would describe chords and swaras, which are the kind of like the combination of solfege and ABC, like the Carnatic music swaras. But I think it also, it can alienate another kind of person. Like for me, it was kind of galvanizing to be like, I am going to figure this out on my own terms. But I think there are things we can do to show that it's not actually as mysterious as you think it is. And I think that some people in our industry actually, they like the mystique and they like the exclusivity. And I think that's going to be the final thing to knock down when we're talking about breaking barriers.
Yeah, I mean, I know nothing about any Indian classical music except for like a baseline encounter here and there with like raga and stuff like that. But what you're saying about the gatekeeping nature of classical music is such a universal thing, I think, for like with me, I grew up in a rural part of Kentucky. My parents aren't musicians, and so I'm kind of with you. Like my love of music came from other places, and then I found myself having to learn what classical music was, kind of in real time as I started high school band and going to school for music and undergrad
Mm.
and especially like going to school for composition, it was like
Mm,
just
mhm.
all crash courses like along the way. And so I really appreciate what you're saying that, it's like how can we keep our love of music that we develop as a child through all of these kind of like almost intimidating circumstances
Mm, mhm.
unless you do grow up steeped in classical music, western classical music in this case.
Absolutely. And curious, so you were like primarily in the performing world before you entered composing? Was that your entry, was like learning an instrument?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've talked about this much on this podcast, but I have talked about my background a little bit. But so for those who have been listening along the way, I apologize for any repeat information. But at any rate, I think I was kind of with you. I was a very aural kind of musician growing up. I didn't have access to lessons until I was maybe 12 years old, and those were piano lessons. I didn't start playing music until middle school band, playing the trumpet. But I was always gravitated towards, like, for instance, my grandma had an electric organ in her house,
Mm,
and I would just kind of like play by ear, like music I heard on TV and or like music I heard on the radio. My parents listened to 60s, 70s, 80s classic rock and 90s country music. And, that was kind of my musical exposure up until I was in middle school.
mm,
And
mhm.
then at that point, it was like, oh, this is like music is like a lot more than what I know, you know. Um, but
That's
but
incredible.
but yeah, the playing by ear thing was like that's always something I've been good at and something that's kind of like saved me in a lot of ways as a musician and especially as a composer, like being able to auralize, I guess, stuff in my head and just kind of like pluck it out on a piano, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's a fantastic, what you're describing is like a very well-rounded music education, actually. But I think that of all the gate kept parts of classical music, I think composition might be the most,
Yeah,
which is funny because from what you're describing, and it kind of resonates with my background too, is like we're always creating. Like when you went to the electric organ and you're noodling around, right? That is actually composing and that's creating.
right, right.
But somehow we don't, the classical world wants us to, or traditionally has wanted us to keep it as is in some sort of like as some sort of ethereal act that just like
Mm,
descends from the heavens and like comes to you in a moment. I mean, of course, there are huge exceptions to that. Like I think there are three reasons I'm a composer. I was able to become a composer. One was my mom from the start taught us basically that improvisation and composition are two sides of the same coin. And so she would have her students, this is unusual even within Carnatic music, even though it's an improvising tradition, she would have her students, we would learn the first 14 exercises that we're supposed to, kind of the etudes, the very first exercises. And then she'd ask us to write the 15th, basically,
oh, cool. Yeah.
just to see, what kind of patterns are we absorbing and, how creative do we want to get with that. Second reason I'm a composer is that my piano teacher, actually, so within the Western classical world, she allowed me to like play her the things I was coming up with on my own. Sometimes I was working on those at the expense of practicing what I was supposed to be practicing, but she didn't mind at all. And I told her I'm going to be entering this, song contest or these other things. And she's like, well, let's hear it. And, she'd give me her feedback and her input. And the third reason was that because of the exposure to the new music world, those people also were targeting me and saying, hey, do you want to, we're doing opportunities for young people. Do you want to try your hand at it? And that was probably the world that was most intimidating to me because I was like, I can't necessarily follow what you're doing orally all the time. And I definitely don't have the chops to read what you're playing. I'm really interested in it, but I don't know how to enter a world like this, the experimental world, we'll say. But they were so encouraging and they were after me on my case to say, hey, we're running a contest, a young person's contest. Do you want to enter it? And I finally did enter it without telling my mom because I was so scared of this experience. And in my entry, I misspelled the word chord. I was 12 years old, so I really should have known better, but I was like CORD is what I wrote and everything.
Sure. Yeah.
I sent in a bio about the math contest I had won because I had zero musical accomplishment. And I think I also put the wrong email address or mailing address. So anyway, they had the hardest time tracking me down when I eventually had been like the winner for it. But the fact that those people were willing to stand by me, even though I didn't know how to spell the word chord, and so many other ways that I didn't feel that I had the information to do something like that, but they encouraged it. I mean, those are the champions, right? Like they went into a community like mine and we're like, we're going to find people like this who can be interested in this world too. And we're going to develop their curiosity. So even though I'm trash talking the classical music world, I have to call out the people who have been doing this kind of work for a while, not just since summer 2020.
Yeah. Oh, I completely agree. Thank you so much for tuning in to Micromaker by Loose Leaf Transmissions. We hope you enjoyed this brief glimpse into the inner workings of the creative life. If this resonated with you, be sure to check out the full conversation on Music Maker with Tyler Kline, a podcast exploring craft and process, philosophy and inspiration, and the honest, often messy parts of being an artist, creative uncertainty, purpose and identity, and resilience. You can find Music Maker wherever you get your podcasts or by visiting musicmakerpodcast.com.